battle, the planes take off from the carrier to engage the enemy, but then in case the enemy attack the carrier, they have these escort carriers with planes on them to defend the carrier. And she was an escort, and no planes on it, of course, but from there we went back into Sydney Harbour. When we got back into Sydney Harbour after 4.5 years, and ironically the number 9 wharf Piermont, we unloaded, and of those 946 men that boarded her 4.5 years before, 738 of them had either been killed in battle or died as prisoners of war.
Gee. High, isn't it?
2nd 19th suffered the most casualties. I think more even than 2nd 29th. If you go up to Canberra now and look along the wall where they've got all the names, I think 2nd 19th has just slightly more than 2nd 29th.
Yes.
29th.
Well, that's fantastic. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Oh, certainly.
Would you be in a position to comment on the effectiveness of Lieutenant Colonel, later Brigadier Maxwell? Because, you know, he was a doctor, wasn't he? Commanding... that's right. He had one eye. When we were in training in Ingleburn, instead of having binoculars, he had a monocular, just up to one eye. Really? Yeah.
But I didn't know a great deal about him. He was a doctor in World War I. I think he was a doctor, but he practiced in southern New South Wales. But to me, he was just a commanding officer.
Yes.
I didn't have a great deal to do with him because we were all young soldiers, all green soldiers.
Yep. Now, when you were captured and then moved up to Pudu Jail, I think you mentioned you had Clary Thornton, 4th Anti-Tanks, with you? Yeah. Now, did he command the anti-tank battery when they knocked out quite a number of Japanese?
They knocked out 12 tanks.
Yes.
He wouldn't have been. He was a sergeant.
No,
he would have been a tank sergeant.
Right.
Yeah.
Anti-tank sergeant.
Anti-tank sergeant. Now, it's the 4th anti-tank, not the 2nd force.
No, I know. Yes. Thank you.
They get a bit angry if you call them the 2nd force.
Sure. Now, is there anything significant about him as well? Did he get executed later?
No. He was awarded the mentioned in dispatches, MID.
Yes.
And the MID is a little rosette on the I think it's the War Medal.
Yes. And what about Hiramatsu himself? Can you tell us a little bit about him? What was his nickname?
His nickname was the Tiger. Hiramatsu was. He was the devil. He was a shocker.
Well, you wanted to show us a picture of him, didn't you?
Got a picture of him here. Yeah.
Just if you bring it forward, nice and close. Yeah, there's Mr. Hiramatsu, who Charles had contact with for quite a long time.
I didn't really have a great deal to do with him, but I know that he was a horror, and he on that picture, if you can see it, it's got well, I always say he died looking up a rope. He was.
Did he?
He was a small man. He was only 5'6", because that's the picture of him before he was hanged.
Yes.
He used to poke around the camp, and every now and again he'd borrow an Australian hat and poke around. Whenever a barge came in with boom poms, a tie that traded up and down the river, he'd poke around the barge, and you'd walk up and think he was an Australian for a while, but he wasn't.
Yes.
He was a terror.
How would you summarise his relationship with Newton?
I think they got on pretty well. Somehow or other, now Newton was a commanding man. Now just an instance. When we were at Tonson Spring, we had to erect tents. We're under canvas there. Now Newton had got his sergeant major again, Sonny Lloyd. Sonny by now had revived from his wound to the jaw, and he said, "Well," he said to Sonny, "Sight it out so that all the tents are precisely perfect." They were all ready to erect the tents. Tiger came on the scene and said to Newton, "I want you to put them somewhere else." Newton said to him, "You have told me that this is where the camp is going." And then he said, "Sergeant Major, erect the tents." Up the tents went, all in perfect precision lines. Tiger stood back and looked at it, turned and walked away. Newton had won.
Had a win, yeah.
And I'm told that, I'm not too sure about this, I only know this from the grapevine, that Tiger was a punter, and he owed a lot of money, and I think Newton knew this and had some hold over him.
Yes.
I'm not too sure about that though.
And now, what about the medical sergeant, Frank Baker, if he was a sergeant?
Oh yes, Frank was a sergeant. He was in the second. He was in the 20th Battalion. As far as I know, he was a very good sergeant. Except with me, I had pretty good health all the way through because I had money and I could go and buy eggs and bananas. I kept myself in pretty good order, excepting every 6 weeks I'd get malaria. And when I got malaria, I'd be out for 5 days. I just lost 5 days out of my life. Yeah, Frank Baker was a good sergeant and a good medical man.
Yes, yeah. Well,